Okay, good afternoon then to everyone, and welcome to the Spanish Permanent Representation to the European Union. And in the framework of the celebrations of 4 decades of Spain in the European Union, we are honored to host today this conversation between the Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union Cooperation, José Manuel Albares, and the founding director of the Brussels Institute for Geopolitics, Luuk van Middelaar, who's a historian, a political scientist, a professor of EU law, and author of several books. He writes also on international media. He was also the speechwriter of President Van Rompuy. They will exchange about the challenges of the current international context, about Spain's foreign policy, and about EU's international action. So without further ado, I thank all of you for your presence. I pass the floor all to them and enjoy. Thanks.
Mr. Ambassador, dear Marcos, thank you for the occasion offered to our audience and to the Brussels Institute for Geopolitics for this conversation with the Foreign Minister. Minister, for over 4 years now already, and alongside your Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, you have been representing Spain's voice on the world stage, and I'm convinced that, just as me, the audience will be excited to hear your views on Spain's role in Europe and in the world, especially these days, because I know it is a cliche, but we do live historic times. As the Ambassador just said, you are here also to mark the 40th anniversary of Spain's accession to the then European community. Your European story is one of very strong and wholehearted engagement. And I was really moved in a way to learn that as part of these commemorations marking this anniversary, today you have unveiled a mural painting by the Belgian Congolese artist Julian Crevals with this famous images of "The future is Europe." And many in the room will know this because there was a similar one somewhere on the Rue La Loi, which has been destroyed for some, no doubt, ugly real estate project, and your permanent representation has taken the initiative to, in a way, give it a new life here. And I think that in itself also underlines that strong European commitment and the will of Spain to have a common European future. Now, that being said, this artwork may be a nice rallying cry, but at the same time, whether the future is Europe in today's world is far from certain. Now, we have agreed to have a broad-ranging conversation in half an hour, of half an hour. The world is large, and we must, of course, start with the US and Europe and the shifting global order. We are the week after events in Davos, over tensions over Greenland. For some, there is, like Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, it is no longer ambiguous. We now know for sure that there is a real rupture in world affairs. With Greenland, even NATO seemed on the brink of collapse. Now, Minister, despite the very marginal win for Europe in Davos, with Trump rolling back over Greenland and risks and tariffs, do you think there is still going back, or do you agree with those who say this is really the end of an era, we're going into a new world order? And do you think, and I know this is hard to predict, but that the worst is now behind us, or is there more turmoil to come, let's say, this coming year or so, looking at America and Europe? Thank you.
No, thank you for being here today, and thank you to the Ambassador for organizing this. I think that there is a change that is not going to go back. And that's the reason why it's more important than ever that us, the Europeans, we stick to our values and we reshape what we have been doing either among ourselves or with others, like with the United States, to make sure that what doesn't change is our way of life, the security and the prosperity of our citizens. I think that the transatlantic relationship has been and continues been mutually beneficial for both of us, for Europeans and Americans, both when it comes to trade and prosperity and when it comes to security, and therefore it's worth it to keep it. But we need to dance a tango, and it's very clear that the new American administration has a different view on trade, on free trade, on tariffs, and on European security. So we must change to make sure that what doesn't change is our way of living, our prosperity, our single market, but above all, that we remain a peaceful and democratic region, that no one can threaten us or use coercion, whether it is through trade or through the threat of use of force. And beyond the transatlantic relation, we must accept that we are in a multipolar world. And the real challenge is how we can continue deciding on global issues through multilateralism into a multipolar world. What has happened with India, what happened a few days ago with Mercosur, goes in the right direction. There is where Europe should be. Europe has to accept that we have no longer a choice. We are a great economic power. We must become a great political power, not to be aggressive among the aggressive, but to make sure that the deterrence is in our hands.
Yeah, I think indeed the challenge will be for Europe to remain master of our own destiny, and to be able to shape our values. We also have to be able to project some power and prepare that future where we may have to do that also in security terms without the United States. And I want to quiz you a little bit on that again, because there seem to be two approaches to how we must engage with the US. And they were both on display in Davos last week. There was Mark Carney, already mentioned him, who gave a speech which received a lot of plaudits, saying this is the moment for middle and small powers to band together and to withstand the display of brutal force by the great powers. And it was clear whom he had in mind. That's one strategy. Another strategy also in display was NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who opted for the art of behind-the-curtain deals and flattery, etc. So Davos, in a way, was like a tale of two Marks, right? Two approaches, Carney and Rutte. And this is, maybe we have to do both, because until we can actually defend ourselves properly, we may have to make sure that we do not create escalation with the United States. How do you see that interplay between being self-aware of our strength, but also being realistic about what we can do today?
Exactly how you are framing it. We have to do both. Once again, I really think that the transatlantic relation is mutually beneficial for both of us. Certainly, it is for Europe. I think for the Americans as well, but I cannot speak on their behalf. It is from a security point of view and from a prosperity point of view. But at the same time, what we cannot accept is that the world goes brutal, and what is completely unacceptable is that anyone wants to exert coercion and brutality on us. And in order to address the second part, to tackle it, we need three things very clearly. We need to really complete the single market, to remove all the obstacles that are left. And we have, Draghi and Letta has told us what to do. It's just a matter of
We know what to do.
We know what to do. And we need to do it on all different sectors, including digital. The second one is security. We need our fate in our hands. We need our deterrence, because some of our allies are telling us, one of them is telling us, I will not longer do for you what I used to tell you that I would do. And we cannot allow that our citizens feel that their security is lowering. And in order to do that, we have to better integrate the industries of defense and the production of our industries of defense. And the second one, we have to move to the European army, which is an idea that is at the very beginning of the European project. The
1950
European
defense community. And
the defense community, the battle
it was
group.
also a response to a geostrategic crisis of the Korea War. And
Absolutely. And the most important one is we have to rearm on our values. Because at the end, that's what's at stake. And this is for us, and this is for the perception that there is in the world. We are the ones that cannot accept the brutality in the world, and in order to do that, we must tell whoever wants to be brutal with us that we have the means to prevent it.
That is absolutely true. Can I quiz you a little bit on your idea of not only defense integration, defense industry integration, which indeed has a lot of progress has already been made in the past year, a lot needs to be done, but also this idea of a European army, because in a way you are one of the most prominent politicians, foreign ministers, who have brought out this idea. Can you share with our audience, because it has attracted a lot of interest in way beyond Brussels, how you see that also the interplay between the defense industry integration and this idea of a European army? I guess it's not the same timeline on both, but I'm very fascinated to hear your...
When we see every time that we have wanted to give weapons to Ukraine to defend itself and its sovereignty, and we see the difficulties in which we have been running when we wanted, we had the political will, we had the money to do it, but our industries of defense were not sufficiently well integrated to produce at the pace that we wanted. We realized we had the real proof on real time that we have to do it also for our own security. And if we see that one of our main allies is telling us that our security must be much more in our hands, that they no longer can do for us what they used to tell us that they could do, what's the choice? If we want to continue giving the same level of security and deterrence to our citizens, we make 27 armies, each one provided the same level of security, or we try to have one single European army for exactly those purposes. That in addition is nothing antinomic with continue with NATO. It's not obliterating the past, it's more about building the future. And once again, it has been at the heart of the European project. So maybe the destiny, if we can put it in the way of our generation, is to complete what at the very beginning couldn't be done. It's a necessity, and certainly when we look around the world, if we don't want to be submerged by the brutality and the coercion of the world, we need it. It's a real need, both of them.
No, it is a very ambitious proposal in terms of integration, and it opens up all kind of interesting questions also on, let's say, on governance and political authority, because European integration has advanced on many topics, for instance, like the single currency, which was started not many years after you joined the communities in the early 1990s, also as a geostrategic response to the events of 1989. But we could do a single euro, very strong federal project with a central bank in Frankfurt as a technocratic project in a way. That's what we then thought. But the army, it is more difficult. Who is going to take the decision to send out young men and women? So that will require also political leaders a very compelling case. But it will be fascinating to see in the years or even months ahead how this debate evolves. Because I think we can be sure that 12 months from now, many people will have said things or done things or subscribed to things which they do not now. That is the pace of history currently. And I think your proposal in this respect will no doubt be looked back upon at some point. Maybe going back still to the Americas and Trump's agenda, because we've been talking about Greenland, but the year started with a very dramatic display of imperial power in Venezuela, of course, with the capture of Maduro and Trump declaring that Washington would effectively run the country, at least, during a period of transition. Now, many in Europe, in any case, already deplored the authoritarian turn of that government and did not condemn the actions of the US so far, but Spain has been very critical, very vocal in condemning the operation and with the warnings that a policy of appeasement would not work. Flash forward 3 weeks since 3rd of January. Do you feel vindicated by everything we have seen since then?
We were very vocal on the operation, and we were very vocal not recognizing the vote in 2024. In Venezuela, we have taken all sanctions on Venezuela to the table here in Brussels. All of them have a Spanish brand. And at the same time, we are the country that has hosted most of the political prisoners that were free, Leopoldo López, Edmundo González, all of them with an asylum status. So just to make things clear. But we really think that the solution for Venezuela can only come through a very broad dialogue between the government and the opposition. And once again, most of the leaders and 200,000 Venezuelans have a very specific status in Spain that gives them the right to residence and work with my government, with the government in which I sit in, not with the previous government, to make clear, because sometimes people outside of Spain don't know that. And that dialogue must end up on a democratic and peaceful solution. And we all know, we have seen it so many times in the past, a unilateral action, especially a unilateral action by military force from the outside, never brings democracy and peace. It brings chaos. So what we all have to do in that sense is to try to accompany that dialogue.
And you're engaging your EU partners and colleagues on this?
I think that Europe is really behind that idea. And we encourage the new president, Delcy Rodriguez, to continue liberating political prisoners and to create the condition for the people that are abroad can go back and find that genuinely Venezuelan solution for that. And certainly, I see that today most of the people think exactly as we have been in a very, very consistent way we have been thinking. Because don't forget that today everything is connected, everything is far away. Venezuela, Greenland, Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, everything is connected and is part of that challenge and that change in world to which we are confronted.
Yeah, we're going to get some of those other points of these connections starting, I would suggest, perhaps with Ukraine and the security crisis on Europe's eastern flank. The war has been going on for almost 4 years now. It's really a long-term crisis of continental security and, of course, a catastrophe for the people of Ukraine. Now, there's many things to be said about that, but I think here we are in Brussels, and one thing that is obvious is that in the context of potential peace negotiations, the idea of a fast-track accession to the EU for Ukraine is on the table, one way or another. And that is an interesting debate, because on the one hand, Ukraine accession to the EU, NATO seems out of reach for now, can be justified on grounds of security, will help to stabilize the country. It gives also a message of hope. There's also another side to the debate where other observers are worried about the consequences for the Union itself, institutionally, perhaps financially, but also for the Union's security. So it's perhaps still a bit early, but how does the Spanish government, your government, see this, and also how do Spanish citizens see it? Because at the end of the day, Ukrainian enlargement will have to be accepted also by parliaments, and not in Spain, but in some other countries, like your northern neighbor France, perhaps in referendum. What is your current view on that debate?
We were since the very beginning favorable to the accession of Ukraine to the EU. Actually, the negotiations started, the dialogue was open during our presidency, and personally I did a lot for that to happen. Let's not forget that at the end, what really Vladimir Putin doesn't forgive Ukraine is that they dream with being one of us one day. One of us is not only a part of the European Union, but being a democratic, rural society. And they are also fighting for our values. They are fighting, of course, for their freedom and their sovereignty, but they are fighting for their sovereignty. And right now, as there is a dialogue going on, although every night we see the missiles over Ukraine, so I don't think that the Russians are showing any will, not even to appease, but to a ceasefire. But what's really urgent for us to understand is that whatever peace agreement happens in Ukraine, that will be the security architecture of Europe in the future. That's what's really at stake. And that's why it's fair for the Ukrainians and it's fair for European democracy and European values to be behind them. In Spain, I don't think that that poses a problem. Everyone feels very close to that. Don't forget that we come from a history in which Spanish democracy was defeated by fascists held by totalitarians. So it's not that far from.
It's not an innocent.
From our very recent history.
It's not a technocratic discussion. It's
absolutely.
Historic and
it's not only
political.
about money, but
it's
you understand what's at stake. I don't think that a fast track is what is being offered to Ukraine. There is a rhythm and there is a path and it's equal to each other, but we must acknowledge that Ukraine is confronted to difficulties that no other country that is asking for accession is confronted. And at the same time, I agree with the other countries. Some of them have been working very hard for decades already that we cannot leave them behind. So there is a balance. But to answer very clearly and in conclusion, yes to the accession of Ukraine. They are fighting for that. They are fighting for our values. And let's keep an eye on the peace agreement because that will be our scheme of security architecture for the future.
Thank you. That's a very clear answer on a very important issue which will dominate, no doubt, provided there will be a peace deal, many political discussions in the months ahead. Now, even if on an issue there, Europe still has to find its footing because we're not part of the negotiations so far, there are other areas, and you already mentioned them, by the way, where the EU is very strong and has a good vibe, I would say, and in particular trade. You mentioned Mercosur. Actually, today the EU-India foreign FTA was signed. And there's other prospects, in particular in Asia. At the same time, and here I will zoom in a little bit on Mercosur, which of course your government has championed, and like many others no doubt in the room, I'm happy that it finally had a majority, even slim, in the Council, but of course first delays have already been occurred. And with an issue like this, you feel the, let's say, the tension between Europe's will also to project unity and some clout on the global stage, because in the current context, EU-Mercosur, I would say, personally, it's a no-brainer to have the possibility to get closer to Latin America in the current context. But of course, and you're also an elected politician since 2023, there's also the voters, and there can be domestic constraints. So how do you have these conversations with your peers in the Foreign Affairs Council? How do you find that unity, respecting constraints, but finding the balance between what we need to do and national politics?
Very candidly, I think that around Mercosur there have been too many fake news and fake ideas, and that must be clarified. Mercosur is good for European Union, overwhelmingly good. It will benefit most of our sectors. No product will enter the single market without the total guarantees that we have for our own products. So anything different from that, people are lying. Whoever is telling something different. We are going to benefit, all of us, all of our industries, all of our sectors. And those sectors those sectors that might suffer, we have the instrument to compensate. And above all, this idea that products that don't have the guarantees or the safety clauses that usually they have in the single market could go in, it's completely false. And there is a misunderstanding when you see it from Europe. For us, it's just a trade agreement. For them, it's a trade agreement and a signal of political engagement with them. We complain that Europe is staying behind in the world arena. That now different regions, and Latin America is the most Euro-compatible region in the world, they share completely our values and our vision of the world, that they are going with partners that we don't like. Well, we have to show them that we have a commitment in the long term. Mercosur is the right one. In Spain, this is something that people know. Most of the people know, and they say, like, this is true that those countries are very close to ours. They speak our languages. But I'm always really puzzled when I see that in some countries, Mercosur is used to put everything that you don't like in the world, in your life. It's ridiculous.
It's disproportionate. Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's one other, we can briefly touch upon, political issue where there's also always a lot of emotion as well, and that is the Middle East. Spain has stood out also among other European member states for a very early recognition of Palestinian statehood among a group of other active EU members like Slovenia, Ireland, Belgium and Luxembourg. And the same group has also more actively than others, I would say, condemned some Israeli atrocities and also called the actions of the Israeli government a genocide. Now, as you said, everything is linked in today's world, and of course, I think it has not gone unnoticed that critical stance on Gaza has also garnered you support or sympathy in the global south. That's at least the impression I had. Is this something, because you told me you're traveling, you're spending more time on the plane than sometimes in Europe, that you feel that there is a certain appreciation for Spain as leading voice on Gaza? And also, just to follow up, when it comes to the EU position, how do you work with colleagues to overcome these divergences? And some of them are also linked to history and domestic politics.
No, yes, I have felt that our principal position and our coherent position when we talked to Gaza and Ukraine, it was not Gaza only. It was the coherence of what we are saying everywhere that has brought a lot of support from what we call today the global south to our foreign policy, to Spanish foreign policy, and that it's really appreciated. I remember for many months after the recognition, many of the countries in the Middle East, their foreign ministers came to Madrid, I went there, and they were telling me, you are really saving the dignity of Europe. That's how they see it, because basically what they couldn't understand is why you care so much when the kids that are dying in Ukraine, they are white and have blue eyes, and you don't care for the kids of Gaza when they have dark eyes and dark skin. And they saw that in Spain, we don't make differences. At the end, it's the same thing. And this is important, because that's how all those countries in the world perceive Europe. And we pay a very heavy price, much more than any other country or region in the world, when we don't stick to those principles, because we were the ones putting those principles at the table in history. So we should uphold them, and they really don't understand. And we are at the same time the last hope that this world will not go into brutality and the law of the jungle, but that will go in international law. At the table in Brussels, I understand not everyone has the same history, the same relation, the same perception. But there is one thing that we all have, and if not, we cannot be part of European Union. We all must uphold international law. We all must uphold human rights. And at the end, we must all uphold a certain humanity. Europe, it's also about humanism. And that's what I don't understand. When it's so clear in front of your eyes, what is not just, and you just let it go.
Well, that is indeed something we bring as Europeans to the global conversation. Our
Absolutely.
history of values, and we want others to share, but at least defend them ourselves. So
Absolutely.
I think that's what made your position so strong. A final question to round off this part of the conversation, and that is going back also to the beginning. You want Europe to be more sovereign in practical ways, able, as we said, to shape our own destiny in a multipolar world. We already talked about defense, army, defense industry in this respect. So now I'm just going to ask you, it's your 40th anniversary. What would be your wish, your birthday present for Spain and Europe if you could achieve one other thing to increase Europe's sovereignty? What would be top of your list?
Very clearly the European army. Since we have a new president in the United States, every time I speak publicly or I talk to journalists, they ask me to comment his comments, which is not my job. There is nothing I can do on his comments or on his actions. He has been democratically elected and he has the right to do. And I'm always puzzled. They never ask me what is going to do Europe. We cannot wake up every morning to see what's the comment of the day. Mm-hmm. We need to have our fate in our hands. We have the currency, we have the single market, we have the Schengen area. We need the army.
That's a big birthday present. But Minister, I know you have a very tight schedule, but I think we have a bit over 5 minutes to take 2 or 3 crisp, concise, short questions from the room. I don't know whether there's a mic. I see a gentleman on the side. Can you stand up or speak loudly?
Absolutely.
Maybe say your name and your organization, but in a...
Absolutely. Alexander was the same way. From a private investment fund specializing in defense investment. I'd like to ask you about your birthday present. How can you square most of the important initiatives that you've mentioned, human rights, European sovereignty, strategic autonomy, the European army, with Spain's abysmal spending on defense and relative its extremely low contribution to the war in Ukraine?
That's one question from the room. Is there a second question? Will?
Good evening. My name is Vaja. I'm from Georgia. I'm a human rights researcher and project coordinator. Happy anniversary, first of all. My question is related a little bit in terms of Georgian prison. You've talked about diplomatic solution when it comes to Venezuela. You've mentioned that the diplomatic solutions should be pursued. What would you suggest in terms of Georgia? Because we know that there's a huge polarization when it comes to society, and the government that was elected 2 years ago now was not legitimately elected, and this is universally recognized by most of the European countries as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good question also in the analogy. There's a gentleman back of the room.
Good afternoon to everyone. José María Castilla, representing Spanish farmers. So we are not going to talk about Mercosur, don't worry. But let's put the attention today with the India trade agreement. So we believe that is a good trade agreement because the European Commission understood our protest and decided to protect the most sensitive products. So I think that this is the best way to do international trade. Thank you.
So, Minister, 3 clear questions.
To the first question, I'm sorry, I really disagree with what you say, but it's not my opinion, it's facts. My government, the government in which I sit in, the government of Pedro Sanchez, found the military expenditure of Spain, the defense, in one of the lowest point ever in history, 0.8. And in less than 8 years, we have raised to 2%, because you were talking about money. But more important than that, what we are doing, we are contributing more than most of the countries to the Euro-Atlantic security. We have a historical deployment of about 3,000 soldiers in the eastern flank. Our aeroplanes are providing the security to the Baltic countries in the air. We have, since many decades ago, 2 military bases that are jointly used with the United States that provide security to the United States and to Euro-Atlantic security. I really challenge you to tell me countries that do as much as Spain does. But we also want to continue having a way of life that gives public health, public education, scholarships. And the way we see the expenditure of defense is not putting a magic percentage to spend. We look at the threats, we look at the capacities that we need in order to meet those threats, and then we quantify them. And for us, that's 2.1%, and with that, we will give all the capacities that NATO is asking us. And believe me, I'm advocating for a European army. It's needed for security. But security is not only about weapons. It's also about cooperation. Cooperation at the end is much stronger than confrontation. It's also about respecting human rights, very much. It's also about creating a project like European Union that is about democracy. Without democracy, without respect for international law, you can have as many weapons as you want. You will never avoid an endless war. So all that is at stake. But believe me, you will not find in democracy a government that has done as much as we have done to increase our defense expenditure and above all, to cooperate and to give what is needed to Euro-Atlantic security. On Georgia, Georgia is in this path to European Union, and I wish they continue like that. And for me, the recipe is very clear to respect freedom of speech, freedom of peaceful demonstration. We will do as much as we can to accompany that, and that's the Georgia that we want to see. And to the gentleman that spoke at the end, thank you very much for not raising Mercosur. But believe me, Mercosur for a Spanish farmer is very good. Look at wine, oil, pork. But sorry, you didn't raise it, I shouldn't do it. You are right. It's unfair. No, I agree with you. I think that India, 2,000 million consumers, people more or less in that market, what it can bring to our agricultural product that will be beneficial, that's the way to go. We continue believing in free trade. We have very good product, both Spain and Europe, especially in the agricultural sector. So we can only benefit from having more free trade and being more open to others. For me, it's a great news. I was last Thursday in India, and I was really pushing for the agreement that finally has been reached.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you for this riveting conversation, your insights, your visionary birthday wish. And to celebrate that 40th anniversary, for those who have the time, I believe that on behalf of the host, Ambassador Alonso, I can invite you to drinks next door. No, on that side. Yeah, sorry, behind the glass panes over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.